Boy, do we have a good one for you today. I'm going to break down how the Buffalo Bills can get ultimate cap space. And per Brandon Beane's comments today, not only on the Adam Shine show, across the league, I think that the Bills are aggressive this offseason. I don't think it's one he's already mentioned to Tyler Dunn that if the Bills are to be serious, they need to make aggressive moves. He's also mentioned that Joe Brady was his selection, and he'd rather go down with who he felt like was the best selection and a harder selection to sell to the fan base in Joe Brady, one that if he was out of the Bills building would have definitely been number one on his list. So that is very interesting telling, and that if it's wrong, the moving trucks will, quote, be at his door. So I don't think you're going to say the moving trucks are going to be at my door and have a very passive offseason, one where you run back everything and you hope for the best with re-signing the same typical Jordan Phillips, DeMar Hamlin, Cam Lewis. I don't foresee that being this offseason. So that's going to be fun, and we're going to get you there, and we're going to get some names. Brandon Beane also just said today that he believed he had the best deal on what was perceived to be Jalen Waddle. He does not believe the team was serious. He never got the mythical, if you give me this pick, the deal would have been done. Miami seemed to have gone to the press with that way later to save face from the assistant general manager, who later now is not the general manager there, and who had no responsibility to trade that player. He had no chance of selling that player, Jalen Waddle, to the Buffalo Bills in the middle of the season. Someone they would have played for 2 years, had to pay, he already had paid him. None of that is makes any sense. The Bills were the number one offer for him, and they didn't even counter with, if you do this, you can have them or nothing. So those were very interesting comments there on the Adam Shine show. But now it's time to say, I've been asked a lot, how can the Bills save money? And, there's plenty of cap resources out there. There's plenty of good people that know how to do this across different networks. But I'm going to take an aggressive angle, not the smart and then think about the future angle. This is a Buffalo Bills team that needs to maximize Josh Allen's window now, not maximize it in 5 years when things may be different. It's one where I still think you can have money down the road and still be smart. If you look at where the Bills are starting, everybody has mentioned to me negative $7.5 million in cap space, obviously $38 million next year, 146, and then they're continuing to be in better and better shape. The way that Josh Allen's deal is structured, he is most certainly going to get a maximum restructure right off the top, and that will bring you to where you need to go. So let's just, for purposes of this conversation, let's get this one done early. And boom, the Bills right there are back to just one move with Josh Allen, $11 million in cap space. And that is a move. And it doesn't, as you can see, doesn't really overly affect your future cap number. So your future cap number probably in 2029 is going to be like 370 along those lines. So they will have plenty of cap space. There is no issues. As you go forward. So I want to make that clear that some of them will borrow from the future with some of these deals, but it doesn't overly kill you. The cap number's going up. You're going to be able to make sensible, smart moves, as well as clear up a lot of money, because the Bills are going to need to put all types of different defensive players in front of Jim Leonard, who was perceived to be everybody's number one defensive coordinator option per Brandon Beane. Davis Webb, when he was interviewing all types of different candidates, that he mentioned that Jim Leonard would be the number one candidate for many defensive coaches. For many people that wanted them to lead their defense. So he's going to have to have his own defense. Can't really do that with the $11.1 million that we have sitting there. So let's make a few more sensible moves as players that I do believe are standards on this Buffalo Bills roster. And usually a pretty good place to look is who has some term remaining, like who has a few years remaining left on their deal. And also, what is their base salary? So if their base salary is already low, so let's just say like Christian Benford, for instance, he doesn't really save you anything to do anything with. He just got his new deal. He's already at a reasonable $7.3 million cap hit. What an arrangement for a top 20 corner. So you don't really do anything with Christian Benford. That's just an example of someone you don't have to touch right now. Maybe down the road you will. But I just wanted to mention what you're looking for when you're looking for different arrangements. So one that I think is pretty, and then also you're like Greg Rousseau you don't want to push money there. You don't know how that's going to work out with the transition. So you'll probably leave Greg Rousseau and Christian Benford alone. So we'll call that out right from the start. But I mean, I think some pretty obvious ones, you look at some pretty higher base salaries across the board here. Deion Dawkins, he's just going to retire a bill. I don't have any other reason to think that he won't. So let's restructure him down the road. And boom, the Bills have $21 million in cap space from two moves, and they still don't overly crush. A little bit into next year, a little bit of crushing down the road, but it's really negligible. It's something you can free next year. I'm not really worried at this stage of what the Bills are going to do with any of this stuff. Now let's continue on to some more decisions as how the Bills can continue to get upwards of 80 million. Right now, we're already at 21 million with the 2 moves. So as you can see, this is starting to compile and add up. I mean, I think they have a couple of decisions, right? So Curtis Samuel, I thought he was as good as gone, but he's a Joe Brady guy. Do they get him to take a pay cut? What do they really do with Curtis Samuel? He's one that's super interesting to me because right now his cap, he's not going to play under this cap hit of $9.9 million. Like, it's not going to happen. Like, that's something that it's just not, they're going to do something there, right? But if you look at his dead money, it's 3.4 million. So they do have to pay him that in cap responsibility anyways. Is there a way they can ask him to take half of that and keep the player as a receiver 4, receiver 5? That could be a way that they also save almost close to the 6 million. Maybe they say 4 million, but keep the player. So that could be a way that Joe Brady gets a receiver 4, receiver 5, Tyquan Thornton anyways. Maybe he feels more comfortable with a Curtis Samuel type of arrangement. So that's really where you can extend or renegotiate that number because you're kind of on the hook for him anyways. So he's like a pretty interesting one where I thought it was a shoe-in cut and still could be, but I still think they could want the player for Joe Brady. Anybody else he's cut, Joe Brady, maybe the one that says, you know what, I'm going to pay someone 2 or 3 million anyways to be receiver 4, receiver 5. Maybe he stays. But for principle of this discussion, let's say they pick somebody else to be it. We'll just say they're sick of his injuries. I'm definitely sick of his injuries, but I could see Joe, just to be clear, I could see Joe Brady redoing this deal and trying to shave 3 or 4 million instead of a full 6 million. So let's go ahead and cut him. And as you can see, boom, go up jumps the cap space, $27 million already, just from some sensible moves in this arrangement. Now, Ed Oliver, I think they have a plan for him. I really love to see him in this new attacking 3-4 defense. It's not going to be a ton different. It's really negligible in what may happen. So let's get a restructuring on him, and let's save even further money, $36 million in cap space. Now, here's a couple more interesting candidates for the Bills. Dawson Knox. I think they do another Curtis Samuel type of sensible deal. You already owe him $7.4 million in dead cap space anyways. So what can they do to rearrange so that they're not paying him 17? So do they keep him, try their best to keep him around 11 million in cap hit, or do they want to take the full $9.6 million cap? He's got to do something. He's got to do something immediately. For purposes of this discussion, maybe he comes back. But as of right now, I have no inkling to know what kind of deal he'll take. I really think he's around a $5 million player. So you could probably, just like Curtis Samuel, decide to not take the max savings, but keep the player. It's very possible in this case. But right now, with his number as is, he's as good as gone. Now the Bills are up to $46 million in cap space, just like that. And those are very obvious moves along those lines that will happen. The Bills will get some money and we'll be able to move forward with that arrangement. So let's continue on. That's pretty much where a lot of people, I don't want to say end, but a lot of people will probably say, okay, the Bills are in pretty good shape at $46 million. We can do some stuff with that. We can move on. We can do our job. Sounds good. I think they're going to want a different safety. I think Taylor Epps is good as gone. So let's just cut him too, to get the Bills up to about around $50 million. So those are some pretty easy arrangements. Now the Bills, one thing I want to mention real quickly, the Bills do have some void year players that they could mess around with to keep on a decent salary level. So let's pull up like let's use, I think the best example, well, there's a couple of good examples of players with void years that they could end up keeping, but let's use, for principles of discussion, Matt Milano. He's a really good example. Now he's owed $11 million on or off the roster. So do the Bills just say, you know what, 11, he's done here. Let's move on and take that dead because they've pushed some money down the road on him? They could. Could they actually save money by utilizing that void year and re-signing him? I think that's just as likely to do something with that number. Here's his numbers here. We can see on the screen where his prorated bonus is how you get to 11, 6.1 plus 4.9 roughly. And that's how you get to the dead cap money. So you can actually save $5 million by keeping him in 2027. I think if Jim Leonard wants him in this defense, I think you sign him to a 2-year deal, right? And you can spread out, let's say he's worth a $3 million signing bonus. Boom. The Bills think he's worth $3 million, and they give him, 1.3 in a base salary. He's worth $4.3 million this year. And next year doesn't overly matter for this discussion. They may do something with this anyways, but let's just, we'll just put a minimum salary in here for now. And you can see his cap's now $8.9 million. It goes down to keep the player. Boom. We sign him. That's a no-brainer to me. You keep Matt Milano at least for another season, and you free up $2 to $3 million doing it. I think that it's an underrated move that nobody's talking about right now. And you can do this same concept with Connor McGovern. And if you want Joey Bosa, who's another, players that are currently not signed at the moment, Joey Bosa is going to do the same thing to you. He's going to cost you $7.2 million. He is more likely to stay if he's willing to continue in this defense than many think. I don't think he played well enough to, especially after the playoffs, to earn a huge amount of money. But the edge market could end up working for him in the 3-4. Does he feel like that could be a good position to be one of those joker rushers on this defense? I think it could happen. The Bills could save some money doing this too, possibly. He'll probably still end up costing you. Right now, his cap number is only 1.8 if you keep him. So let's just say you give him a $16 million signing bonus. That's how much money he will get today. His number is about similar, and then he's obviously going to get the minimum base salary, $7.1 million to keep the player here in Buffalo. And then, obviously these don't overly matter for this discussion. We can, what his base salaries will be in the future doesn't affect the Bills, in my opinion, too much. But you get to keep that. That's just another example of you get to keep that player at the same dollar amount. So now you got Bosa and Milano back, and you saved money by the combination of the two. So those are things. And I don't even know that Bosa would get a $15 million signing bonus. That's probably more. So I was just making it an even for even example. But the Bills could save some more money based on Joey Bosa's deal too. So Matt Milano and Bosa have a chance to be a Buffalo Bills. I agree with McGovern does too. I don't think you'll see players like David Edwards. I think maybe you'll see Brandon Cooks, but I don't see a lot of other free agents possibly staying. Edwards is probably gone. I don't think they're going to save him. I don't know what Trey White feels about the defensive transition, but obviously he's loved by Bean. He has more than enough, and most of this other stuff. RFAs here and Vandemark or Anderson. Do they give him full tenders? There's some options here, but I really think the gamut of these free agents just consider him gone. As good as gone at this stage. I think the only one that they possibly consider is using Matt Milano's money, Joey Bosa's money, and Connor McGovern's money. And then Daquan Jones, they're just going to say see ya after his rant on social media. So let's continue. So the Bills are at $51 million already, and these are sensible moves. These aren't crazy. You can sound off in the comment section and let me know so far what you think of restructuring Alan Dawkins and Oliver, signing Milano and Bosa, and having $51 million to continue to play with. I mean, that sticks out to anybody. You've cut Samuel and Knox. Those could be sensible restructures too, in terms of, let's say, renegotiations. Restructure in terms of the way that the term is, are actually just kind of taking the money, giving them a bonus and pushing them out to remaining years, maybe adding void years, maybe not. So that's a restructure. A lot of people conflate and confuse restructure and renegotiation or pay cut. Totally different concepts. So that should be very well known. But I do believe the way that the void years are set, Milano and Bosa, they have an opportunity. Bosa cost us no money this year to keep. That's something, and I think he's still getting paid, in my opinion. He's getting paid $17.3 million this year. $16 million bonus, $1.3 million base salary. He's making, in my opinion, what is still a really good. So he's not really doing anything, and I think he might have to take less than that. But let's just use that for principles of discussion. And Matt Milano, I think, is getting a really nice deal to stay too. So there's some money being saved there. Now, here's the big one. Josh Palmer. I don't think he can be on this roster. I mean, he was hurt. He was said now to have the calf, the knee, and the hip. I don't know that the $11.2 million is something. I think the Bills maybe do a pick swap to get rid of him, a 7th for a 6th, along those lines. I do think there's a reason why he got the deal he did, not because no one wanted him. He wasn't a reserve player. He was said to come in to be receiver 2 in most organizations, getting $10 million a year. There are teams that wanted him last spring. Now, they don't have to pay him a signing bonus. They don't have to do anything. They can take his contract as is and see how he works in their system. There's a lot of teams with a lot of money. I don't think it's crazy for a pick swap. I'm not asking for a lot of money, maybe even a player that they want to get rid of. It doesn't really matter. So I think that a trade could possibly happen. And the Bills then, boom, as we can see now, we're up to $56 million. They free up some money next year. I mean, they're in pretty good shape. I don't believe Josh Palmer's on the roster, and they need to find a trade candidate to trade him to. That is, I guess, the one that's a little bit more unsure than all the other moves, in my opinion. But it's definitely one I'd like to see. I'd like to see happen. I think that the Brandon Beane could get aggressive and somehow unload him like he's done many times with other players. Elam wasn't overly. I know his salary's a little less. He still had a guaranteed pay and still had to get paid around $4 million. So it's not crazy that someone would take Josh Palmer for 2 years this year, and then next year they could get rid of him if they wanted, if he doesn't perform, or they have him at a pretty good rate if he does. So I think that that's first and foremost. Spencer Brown's a stud. I have no problems extending him. I mean, restructuring him and pushing him out as well. Let's move him down. The Bills are at $67 million. And I think you need to be aggressive. Will all of these happen? Maybe, maybe not. I don't think it's crazy that a lot of these things can get done in a year that you're being aggressive. I still haven't overly hurt our cap space in future years. I don't think any of this is overly nutty. You can do Josh Allen in a couple of different ways instead of a traditional restructure. So I ultimately think that there's a lot of money, a lot of ways. I'm looking at dead cap here too. So I wanted to take a look at that briefly. So as we continue on, I don't believe, in my opinion, I'm done yet. So let's look at like a Greg Rousseau. Did they do anything there? No, can't really do anything there. Taron Johnson. Now he's the one remaining that's sticking out to me. What do you do with Taron Johnson? You can't really do much with him. You can't really cut him. You could save a few million, $2 million at the moment to cut him. I don't know. That's a really weird. I don't know how he'll fit in. He's definitely, a guy that has done a lot for this roster. He's a complicated one, in my opinion, of like, what do you do with his number? I think that there's a couple of things you can consider as do you want to make a hole at nickel for not a lot of savings? I don't know. I think they already bought him with the restructure before the trade deadline when the Bills thought they were going to get a player. Was a tell that at least he has another year. And unfortunately, I think we're going to have to see Taron Johnson continue on this roster. Bills are now at $73 million in cap space. So I think that unfortunately that's a move that I would make if I was the Bills, and you're just going to have to continue on the fold. Now, do the Bills need more money? I mean, you could probably somewhat save a couple million on Osiris Torrance if you re-sign him now, maybe get a better rate this year than you would in future years. So as you can see, the base salaries, there's not a lot else in this to do. Like, we're going to keep everything else pretty much the same. There's not a ton to go. Could you cut Ty Johnson? Maybe. I wouldn't. So there's not really, as you can see, a lot of other moves that be made anymore. I do think there's only probably one remaining move that the Bills could think about. I'm not cutting Ty Johnson. We'll leave Osiris Torrance alone. I think Beane's already addressed that Bass's number's fine. They expected him to be back possibly in the Super Bowl. You're going to leave Bernard and Cook alone for now. Shakir's nothing. I think that with the way Michael Hoyt fits in this defense now, and you're hopeful for him to continue on, I think you add a void year onto him, and I think you get rid of the $6 million. That's my final move. And that's just which gets you to $77 million. To get to 80, there's definitely it's just kind of more fun to do, but there's definitely some things you can do with, like I said, do you somehow get Bosa at a better rate? I think that would be one that could get you closer to 80. Could you extend a year and move some more money around for Hoyt? You could possibly do that. But ultimately right now you can see their cap numbers are pretty low. And Milano I have on the books at $8.9 million, saves a little bit there over his. And I think I paid him reasonably too. So there's probably a dollars and cents that you could be had across different moves. But as you can see right now, I've had them freeing up $77 million, 77. And I think I was a little more sensible when I got to 80. I was being a little more aggressive. This is an aggressive plan. This isn't minor. I was a 10 out of 10 before. I'd probably scale it to a 9 out of 10 just to be a little bit more reasonable. Do they go 9 out of 10? That's for everybody here to determine. Sound off in the comment section how you would spend the $77 million. The Bills don't really lose anybody doing this. I'm not worried about any of these numbers. They have future money in pretty good shape across the board. I'm not really worried about anything to do with this. You ate into 2029 a little bit, but we don't even know what that'll look like. Ultimately, you're still going to be in 140 or 150 million in cap space as of right now. And really the only questionable move I made was the Josh Palmer trade, pre-June 1st Josh Palmer trade. other than that, I don't think anything is overly crazy. I guess bringing back Matt Milano could be the other one. I really think it's reasonable to save $2 to $3 million bringing him back. But that could be one the Bills determine, like, okay, whatever. It's not really that much money. We're going to let him go. But other than those two, I don't really think anything here is that crazy. As I look through it again, just to double confirm, I mean, if you don't like Bass, you could save some money. It's, I guess, still on the table, and that gets you right to the 80 number. I'm keeping him for this discussion. As I said, I'm going to stay at a 9 out of 10 instead of a 10 out of 10. So, I mean, I think Dorian Williams fits in nicely. You technically could cut him and save 3.6 if he doesn't fit the new defense. You're not going to do anything with Daquan. I keep Ty. There's really not a ton else that I would do here anyways. Your replacement level player for Carter, I think you give him a shot this year, and everything else is pretty straightforward across the books. I don't see much savings other than maybe lowering Torrance a little bit and possibly doing something different with Joey Bosa. I think you could save a couple bucks there. So Dawson Knox, do they fully let him go? That'll be another one that they'll have to discuss because that tight end room is so good. And by all accounts, we still haven't heard on any of the coaching staff staying on Joe Brady's staff, which is interesting. They are doing a full removal of all the coaches, and I've already announced some defensive coaches that the Bills have got a couple of new defensive coaches too already on the fold. So, none of this is for sure yet, but I still think that there's a path to $77 million where you go out and you get a receiver one. I think that's pretty sizable. Who does Pete Carmichael like? Who does, Jim Leonard? Who's he looking for specifically? So there's still a couple of moves that the Bills could make for these coordinators. To finish off the discussion, Jeff Rodgers is off the special teams coordinator. Pat Myers, we've already talked about the O-line coach, but Bobby April III is back as the OLB coach. You have Jay Valai as a cornerback coach, a really great succession plan for Jim Leonard, and a cornerback coach from Oklahoma. He's wanted by many teams. He's going to be a really cool addition. And John Nkwakwu was here underneath McDermott with Tremaine Edmonds. So Tremaine Edmonds, does he become a need? Does Bobby Okereke become a player that could be, now from New York? Because that's where the inside linebackers coach is mostly recently. So there's a couple of really solid names that jump out to me right now of players that the Bills could target affordably in this defense. But stay tuned here. Sound off in the comment section. Let me know what you guys think of making $80 million. What an amount of money the Bills can make here. And looking forward to bringing you free agent targets and more right here in the Bills Roundtable. We'll be live with you guys shortly on Thursday. But let me know what you think about the $80 million. Talk to you guys soon.